Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Jonah from Discover, and today we have Teela Cunningham. Before we get going any further, just to make sure you all can hear us and see us all right, please pop in the comments. Let us know that the visual, the audio is all working well. Also, please shout out where you're coming from. We love to hear where people are tuning in from. Maybe something you're excited to learn, how you heard about Discover, or you heard about Teela. These are all things we love to hear. Teela, if you can give just a little wave and hello so we can make
Hey
sure everyone can
guys.
hear you. Cheers. Just setting a couple expectations today before we get rolling. If anything is moving too fast, and I noticed as well, there was already some questions about this in the comments. There will be a replay available. It'll be emailed to you along with the course offer, as well as available on the YouTube page or the Discover page. So fret not if you have to leave the computer or Teela moves through stuff pretty quick. Also, if you have questions during the presentation, feel free to ask them. We'll try and get to them if they're pertinent to what Teela is tackling, but we will also have a formal Q&A at the very end. So if you can hold on to them, that's a better way to guarantee we'll get to them. And it looks like everyone can hear and see us. Oh, this is fun. We got tuning in from Memphis, Colorado, New York, from Canada. Thank you so much for joining. All right. I'll give a proper introduction here so we can get going. As I mentioned, we have Teela Cunningham. We are going to be learning how to create hand-lettered fonts, and a couple things we can expect to learn is how you can start creating hand-lettered fonts and how to sell them. If you're familiar with Every Tuesday, then you know Teela's love for lettering and design runs deep. In the last 4 years, she has taught over 50,000 students, and her design and lettering videos on YouTube have accumulated over 10 million views. She loves sharing what she's learned over her career and creative tips that will have your artwork leveling up in no time. Now, Teela, I don't want to take over the whole day, so I will hand it off to you.
All right, that sounds good. So I have a presentation for you today so we can go through all the steps and a good overview. And I'm also going to give you a mini demo in Adobe Illustrator as well. We will talk about the font making program, and I can give you a demo in there if we have time for it. So we got a lot of information. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start with the presentation. So if you have questions as we're moving along, I am very, very happy to answer anything. This is all for you guys. So let me move over to my screen.
Awesome.
And hopefully you guys can see presentation is up.
Can see you good there.
All right, perfect. So I want to give a little bit of my background just so you can kind of get some context about how I got into font making and how I arrived where I'm at, so you get an idea of where this process is coming from for me. So I'm a graphic designer, a formerly trained graphic designer, and I'm a hand letterer. And I've always dreamt of being able to type with my own letters. Like, how cool is that? That's been just a dream of mine for so long. So I decided that I was going to teach myself. And unfortunately, teaching myself took a really, really long time because there's so few information online for hand lettered fonts specifically. And if you've ever checked out formal software before and you've read through their documentation, it's like reading a whole different language. It's actually really, really difficult, way more difficult than I was expecting. So that's why it took me so long to teach myself. And all of that documentation is mostly for like sans serif or serif traditional style fonts, not hand lettered fonts, which is what I wanted to do. So I had to kind of invent my own process in order to make it happen. So I launched my first font in January of 2016, and I called it Tuesday Script since my brand is Every Tuesday. And it made $7,000 the first month it was available. It was mind-blowing. And that's what that font looked like. And it's still selling today after all this time. So after that summer of 2016, Kohl's, if you're in the US, then you're probably familiar. It's a very large department store, and they do some serious promotions around Black Friday. That's kind of their thing. And they contacted me that summer and they asked to license it for their entire holiday campaign. So that meant it was going to be on TV. It was going to be in print ads on their website, all throughout every store throughout the US. So here's some pictures from that. I was so excited. I got to go in on Black Friday and take a bunch of pictures. So it was just such an incredible moment to be able to see my font in real life, like legitimately come to life. So that was in 2016, and I had made 2 other fonts that year. And at the end of the year, I ended up making over $40,000 just on my font sales. So that was shocking to me how much of a market there is for hand lettered fonts. The more that I thought about it, the more it made sense because it humanizes brands, which can be really attractive, especially with so much competition these days, to appear smaller than they actually are. And then you've got your crafters and your side hustlers that are using fonts on their own products. So it just humanizes anything that you put it on. So in March of 2017, because I was getting a lot of requests since I was doing my weekly every Tuesday tutorials, I was asked by many people if I could share my process for font making, since it's kind of my thing. I just share how I make everything. So in March of 2017, it took me, probably 4 or 5 months to put this course together. I released my online course, Learn Font Making, and it spells out my entire font making process, including everything I do to market and sell my fonts too. So in this workshop, I'm going to give you an overview of what that process is. Since we only have an hour here, I'm going to give you every part of that process, but the more detailed and in-depth sections are all within the course. Okay. So step number 1 is create the lettering. And this is the really, really fun part because you get to sit down and you letter out all of your letters in the style that you want to make your font. So you can do this a couple of different ways. These are my favorite ways. You can either create it on an iPad using Procreate, or you can grab just your favorite traditional art supply hand lettering utensil and just write it all out on pen and paper. So when you're writing all of your letters out, there are a couple ways that you can do that. So you can write out all of the individual characters in a row, like A, B, C, just go right down the line, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, any extra accents for your diacritics, which are your accented characters for multilingual fonts. So this is what that can look like. So you just write it all out as you would say the alphabet. And then the other way is to write out words. This is kind of my favorite way now. Write out words using all the characters, because then you start seeing what your font will look like come to life, because it's actually written out in actual words instead of just individual letters. So you get an idea of what that font's going to feel like. So this is what I do now. So I write out just random words, and I usually just choose a category. Like sometimes I choose locations. This one's just food. So just choose a general category and it'll help you just write them all out much quicker that way. So I write out all uppercase, and I didn't show it here, but I will write out the same words in lowercase. So that way I know I have every single letter of the entire alphabet. And then I've got relationships, so I can see, do I want extra ligatures, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And you can just see which letters. You'll have more to choose from, to pick from as you're choosing, like which N do I want or which R do I want. So it's a lot easier than going back and choosing, I have one to pick from and hopefully it all works out. So that's my favorite way to letter out my letters. So once you have your letters, you need to get them onto the computer. So we do use a computer throughout the course because our font software and Adobe Illustrator, which we also use, we have to use them. And now that there's an app for Illustrator, but it's brand new and it doesn't have all the features that we need. So desktop or laptop, because the font software is desktop or laptop only, and then Adobe Illustrator. So once you have your letters, you get them on the computer if you lettered everything out using Procreate, you just want to export it as a JPEG. And then you can either email it to yourself or you can airdrop it to yourself if you're on a Mac. And if you wrote them all out on paper, you can scan them in with a traditional scanner, or you can just take a picture with your phone. I like using an app called Scanner Pro. It automatically gives you a high contrast image. So your vectorization in Illustrator is more precise, which we're also going to talk about. So step 2 is vectorizing. Now we are going to bring it into Adobe Illustrator. And what Adobe Illustrator does is it takes a raster image, which is a pixel-based image. Pixel-based images are made up of tiny little bitty squares, which are called pixels. And vector images are made up of points. So they're infinitely rescalable. If you've ever scaled up a photograph, you've noticed that it gets blurrier the bigger that you make it, because you're stretching pixels and you're asking that image to come up with information that it doesn't have. When it's point-based, you're stretching points. So it's like a rubber band. It's just stretching that very solid image. So there's no blurriness that happens with it. So we need to convert pixels to points. So that's what happens in Adobe Illustrator and why it's so important. If you've ever looked at a font at 8 points, it can be super crisp. And then at 80 points, it's going to look just as crisp. So that's why it's really important. So anyone that's using your font is going to have it show up perfectly no matter what. Okay, so in the vectorization process, you're going to open your lettering in Adobe Illustrator. You're going to image trace to convert your image to vector art. You're going to clean up your points to make your letters look exactly how you want them to look. And then you're going to format your letters for easy copying and pasting into the font software. So I'm going to give you a demo in Adobe Illustrator on this whole process so it's super clear. So if I come into Illustrator, here is my scan. I just scanned these right into the computer, and then I brought them right into Adobe Illustrator. So I'm just going to take this one as the example. I'm going to select it. Up here, I'm going to choose image trace. Can you guys see this all right? Are we still good?
Yes, we can see everything good, Teela.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
so I'm going to hit image trace up here, and this is what's going to convert it to points. So I'm going to hit OK. And it's going to run it. And you can see we've got some letters that are looking pretty good and some that we kind of missed because the scan, this was done with India ink that was watered down a little bit. So the transparency there, it does have some transparency. So that's why I'm missing some sections. But luckily in Illustrator, we can edit that and adjust it. So we're going to come up to this image trace panel, and this allows us to adjust this before committing these changes. So what I can do, you want to make sure preview is checked right here so you can see all the changes that you make. The threshold is going to make all of our letters just a little bit thicker. So you can bring it up and it's going to run it, and you can see suddenly we have our letters. And we can adjust this if you want it to be more precise, if you don't like it looking so thick. So you can toggle that around. If you toggle this advanced caret down, we can see how we can increase our paths. Our paths are the edges or the outline of the letters, and the higher that this is, the more precise it's going to become. So we can run that. Same with corners and noise. I usually bring this down to 1, so it's extra crisp. And then when you're happy with it, all you have to do is come up here and hit expand. And then we're going to ungroup it. So I'm on a Mac, but you can do this on a PC too. It's just either Control-Shift-G or Command-Shift-G, and that ungroups it. So now we can grab our individual letters, but they're still white around here. So I'm just going to select all the white on my image by hitting Y on my keyboard, the letter Y. Then I can select all the white and then just delete it. Okay, so I can zoom in here and we can check out our letters, and you can see they're a little rough looking because as good as the image trace function is, it is not perfect, and you will likely always need to make a few edits to make it exactly how you want it to appear for your font. So I'm going to show you just how I'm going to clean up this lowercase a. So I can grab it. As I'm grabbing it, it's grabbing this entire section since all of this is together, and I can separate it just by using my eraser tool. So I can just erase that away, and then I can just grab just my A. I'm going to bring it up here. Actually, I'm going to make a copy so you can see the before and after. So if I zoom in this part, you can either use, so I recommend the Astropad app if you do have an iPad. It allows you to draw with your stylus on your iPad because it mirrors your desktop or laptop screen straight to your iPad. So I find that if I can edit things with a stylus, it's more natural than me just using a mouse. But you could totally use a mouse. You could use a Wacom tablet. And now, if you are on a Mac, there's a sidecar feature. There's something called Sidecar, and it works the same way as Astropad with mirroring your desktop or laptop screen on an iPad. So that makes it really cool. Because what I do is I select the letter, and then I grab my pencil tool, which is keyboard shortcut N, and then I can just come around my letter and fix the little areas that I want to be cleaner. And this will adjust my points. So if I don't want as many points, the more points you have, the more information your font file has. So the larger your file will become. So this reduces your file. It makes your letters look cleaner. And it looks less like it was an automatic tracing that, you know, anyone could do. So this makes it much more special and unique to you. So once you have that, this area, this negative space is called your counter in your letter. So I need to just reselect my letter and then edit this one after I get my outline done. So I'm just using a mouse right now, so it's not perfect, but you can see what a difference it makes. Just a little bit of cleaning up here. And if we compare it to the original, we've already come a long ways with it looking much cleaner and less automated.
Teela, are you using any keyboard commands while you're using the pencil tool, or is that just the pencil tool at work there?
This is just the pencil tool. As long
That's
as
so
your
cool.
as long as your character is selected, you can grab your pencil tool by hitting the N key on your keyboard, and then I'm just tracing around with my mouse. I click and then I drag to correct my path, and that's it. Super
cool.
easy,
Thank you.
right?
Yeah.
And then
so cool.
to go back to my selection tool, I just hit V on the keyboard, and that it's easy to deselect. So if you just know a couple of keyboard shortcuts, you can get really far without having to, come over here constantly. So you can see the difference that it makes. And once you get all of your letters, this is what I do. This is a bit of work, but so worth it. So let me zoom in here so you can see. So this is all the letters all cleaned up. I put them on a baseline, which it's really easy to drag a baseline. If you have your rulers turned on, which is either Command R or Control R on a PC, then you can just drag a line down and then you can set your letters right on top. So you can give yourself a guideline for everything. So I knew exactly where I wanted them all to sit. And you can see how they're connecting really nicely. When I do this part, I also will put words together. So I knew I was going to call this font Miss Magnolia. So you can see I've mocked it up so I can see, okay, this is all feeling the way that I want it to feel. Scale-wise, do I have any letters that feel too big or too small? I can adjust that because I want to do that before I start bringing it into the font program and even the next step in Illustrator. So this is a really nice time to see how everything feels, how it's connecting. Are things too tight? Do they need to be more spaced out, less spaced out? So you get a lot of information from putting all of this together. And yeah, so I'll just put random words together using the letters. And you can see I've put some ligatures together. So ligatures are your special character relationships. So with hand lettered fonts, you don't want like one T, if you're going to have two T's next to each other, you don't want them to look like replicas, because in hand lettering, yes, they're going to look similar, but they're not going to look exact. And especially with this crossbar, it's a perfect opportunity to connect them. So double letters are great for creating ligatures. So it's basically telling the font, whenever you see these two letters together, don't just make duplicates of them, switch them out with the special relationship that I have defined. So when I'm creating a font, I think about these special relationships that might occur pretty often. And I will make a special relationship like this double T with the mutual crossbar. And it just makes the font feel that much more special and that much more unique and that much more hand-drawn, which can be really appealing to buyers. It ends up just this little bit of extra effort can be a massive selling point when you're promoting your font, saying, look at what I've packed into mine that maybe other fonts ignored or didn't include. So it's all these like little special gifts that you can give people with your font. So this is that next step once you have all of your letters cleaned up. And after this, we're going to format it with an Illustrator so it can copy and paste into the font software exactly the way we need it. So I have enlarged all my letters and I've positioned them in a certain way within Illustrator, which makes it perfect in the font software. So they all line up perfectly with each other, which makes especially script connecting letters a breeze. Like it goes super fast. You don't have to test every single letter with every other letter this way. This allows you to move really quickly. So I want to show you my layers here. I have every letter on its own layer, so I can turn off like my A. I can grab my O is right here. You can see I've got all of my lowercase on their own layers. So it makes it really easy for me to be like, okay, I'm ready to put in my lowercase b. There's my lowercase b. I grab it, I copy it, and then I paste it right into the font software. And it doesn't matter if you're on a Mac or a PC, the process is exactly the same. So that makes it really easy, no matter what format you prefer computer-wise. Okay, so let's hop back into the deck so we can talk about step number 3, which is bringing your font or your lettering into the font software. So we've got everything done in Illustrator. We've got it formatted out. They're in these nice tidy little squares and they're positioned perfectly. So now we just copy and we paste into the font software. So there's so much software out there these days. There's some tried and true software that's been around for years that continues to be improved and that I personally use and I recommend. So for a Mac, I recommend either Glyphs or Glyphs Mini. Glyphs Mini is much more affordable than the full version. So what I did is when I first started playing around with fonts and seeing if it was something I really wanted to do, I got Glyphs Mini, which I think is around $50 US. And I played around with that. You can do a basic multilingual font with that. So you can still create a sellable font. There's nothing wrong with it at all. The full version of Glyphs allows you to add in special characters. Like if you want to offer a buyer an alternate G or an alternate N or T, you can add that in. You can program it in. Those ligatures, you can add that in the professional version, the full version of Glyphs. Those things are more like hacks within Glyphs Mini. Can't really do it very well in Glyphs Mini. So the full version allows you to do all of that really seamlessly. So what I did is I bought the Glyphs Mini, and the more I played with it, the more I was like, okay, definitely on board with creating and selling fonts. So I contacted them and I said, I bought Glyphs Mini. I want to upgrade. Can you do anything for me? And they're super nice. They gave me a discount code. So they said that anyone can do that. If you start with Glyphs Mini and you choose to upgrade, you just email them and they'll give you a discount code for the price you paid of Mini off of the full version. So it's a nice way to get your toes wet and still be able to produce something really wonderful. And you have that option to upgrade and add more features as you get more comfortable in the font making process. So if you are on a PC, the font making software I use is called Font Creator, and you will need the professional license of it. Both of these, whether you're on a Mac or PC, both of the softwares are one-time purchases. So you buy them once and you create unlimited amounts of fonts, as many fonts as you want. So even though it is an investment, think about all the fonts that you can make where you can easily make that money back. So you have to look at it that way, and it definitely makes it a little bit easier. You keep that software forever, and as many fonts, it's up to you how many fonts you want to create and sell after that. So Font Creator, if you're on a PC, both of these interfaces are different, but they work the same way. So in my course, I show you how to do both of them. So you won't have any questions at all. All right, what happens in the font software? We're going to establish the LSB and the RSB of each character. So the LSB is your left side bearing and your RSB is your right side bearing. So this is where we're defining how much space exists on each side of your character or your glyph. So you can see down here, this is where we're going to change the increment. So our letters aren't just touching each other when you're typing them all out. If you have 0 here, they're going to kind of overlap each other. So you define that space, and there's different rules as you're working and creating your font that allow you to do this really quickly. And you'll at least get a baseline. Obviously, every hand lettered font is a little different because the characteristics of our lettering is different. So you will have to alter it, but you'll be able to have a baseline. So at least you can start. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you quick. We had a couple pertinent questions.
Sure, of course.
One was, do you lose any capability using Font Creator over Glyphs?
No,
no. Cool.
Yep, they're comparable, and that's why I originally created the course using Glyphs, because that's what I started with. So when I was searching for PC software, Font Creator was the answer to all of my questions. Things are located in different places, but it works the exact same way.
Awesome.
So yeah, in my course, I have a Mac version and a PC version. The PC version takes you start to finish. We don't touch a Mac at all. Everything is in Font Creator, so you'll know where everything is.
Oh, nice. And just a follow-up to that, someone else was asking if the programs are included in your course or if they're purchased separately.
They're purchased separately because I am obviously not the owner of that software. So you'll have to purchase it separately. But again, it's an investment. It depends on how interested or serious you are about pursuing this as a side hustle. Obviously, the more fonts you create, the higher passive income potential you'll have.
Totally.
So yeah. So especially, when you're both of them have free trials too, so you can test them out and play around with them and see if you love them, which is excellent. And then, you can dive in after that if you're feeling comfortable. So Yeah. So
All right,
this is
thank you.
what's that?
Oh, just thank you for answering those
Oh,
questions.
of course. Was there anything else? Can I
No,
answer
no,
anything else?
those were
Okay.
just pertinent to the software itself, so I wanted
All
to
right.
pop it. Cheers.
Great. So this is left side bearing, right side bearing. We've established the space on both sides of our letter, so then we can start typing it out. So I wasn't going to, but I'm going to give you a demo of that since I've got my software open. So just again, if you're on a PC, it's going to be a very similar process. The interface is just going to look a little different. So I'm going to grab my uppercase O. This is the character you always start with whenever you're creating a brand new font because it's curved on both edges. And then, so you'll do the O and then you'll do the H because the H is straight on both sides. So it helps you like an uppercase C is very similar to an O. So whatever you choose for your O can also be applied to your C, and you can slowly make your way through the whole alphabet. Like a D would be the same on the left side as an H, and on the right side, it would be the same as an O. So I'll show you what that looks like. So I'm going to copy my O, head into glyphs. I'm going to create a brand new font file. So when you open up either Glyphs or Font Creator, this is kind of what you're going to see. You're just going to see grayed out letters where they all go. So I'm searching for my uppercase O. I can double tap on it. Let me reduce the size of this so you can see it better. Okay, so I'm just going to paste in my O. And now I already know for this font I had 30 on each side. So my LSB, which is my left side bearing, is 30, and then my right side bearing is also 30. So just like that, and I can grab my text tool up here, and I can just type a bunch of uppercase O's. So you can see, and I can zoom out. You can see right away, I'm already typing with my font. So it's pretty cool, right? And we can go, let me go grab an H too. So come in here, locate my H.
And Teela, one more question coming in, which I'll second here. Just this grid you built in Illustrator, is that an easy thing to explain quickly how you were doing that, or is that a little more in depth?
It is a little bit more in depth. In the course, I provide the template for free,
Cool.
and I show you how to do it. But basically, you're taking your letters from here. You're going to copy them into this grid template that I've created. And then we grab all of them and we enlarge them all at the same time and we reposition them at the same time. And then I show you how to sequence out your layers so you can get each character on its own layer. So it is a bit in depth, like too much to explain. But yeah, but that's the basics of how I got to this point.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. So I'm going to copy my H and head back into Glyphs, locate my uppercase H, double click, and I need to come off of my text tool, otherwise I won't paste in, and I can just paste that in. And I'm pretty sure I had 45 defined as this for my LSB and my RSB. So now I have an H and an O in my font, so I go to my text tool, I can type in my H and my O. So just like that, I'm typing with my font again. We can talk about the uppercase C. Actually, let's talk about the uppercase D. That will cover both of these. So I'm going to just scroll down here, find my uppercase D, select it, copy it, come into Glyphs, find uppercase D, make sure I've got my cursor selected, paste it in. And then on the left side, since it's straight, we're going to take on the same measurement of the H. But because we already have the O and the H defined, I can just write an uppercase H here. And you can see it's 45. So it makes it super fast. And then this one's curved like my O was, so I can just put O on the right side. And now let's type with it. And you can see we can zoom out, see if the spacing feels good. These are called your metrics, these little lines and extra bits. So we can turn off our metrics if we want it nice and clean, if we want to preview it as we're working. So once you have all of your letters formatted in Illustrator and you start copying and pasting, it goes super fast. So you can start previewing your font in real time. So I opened up one of my past fonts here. You can see I've got all my letters in here. This is for a font I made called Espresso Roast. So I got all my uppercase, all my lowercase. There's a double T ligature there. I can show you what that looks like. Let me grab, since this is called Espresso Roast, let me write out the word latte. You can see this double T, how it's just copied. It doesn't feel special at all. But if I turn on my standard ligatures, now it adds that mutual crossbar and it feels much more unique to the font. So that's just a quick overview of glyphs and bringing your lettering from Illustrator into the actual font software. So let's
Quick
head on
question,
back.
Teela.
Yes.
Just the viewers and I noticed you didn't mess with like the top and bottom for those
No,
fonts?
yeah, that's
Did you-
correct. Good observation. So when we're in Illustrator, we define the vertical metrics already in Illustrator. So you don't have to touch them. You purposely do not want to touch them because otherwise your script characters, especially, these are called exit stems. They won't line up. The vertical metrics have to be the same. Otherwise, they'll never match up. So that's why we take care of all of that in Illustrator. So once you get to the font program, it's just copy and paste, and then you're editing your LSB and RSB, and you're getting everything to work really well together.
That's so cool. Awesome.
Yeah. It makes the process really easy. And this is like, it's so fun because once you get to this part, the hardest part is like getting through all the Illustrator cleanup, getting it where you want it to be. It's mostly like your own, like I get OCD about the cleanup. So I spend probably more time than I need to there. But once I have it done, like it is so fun and satisfying to like pop in the letters and then you see your hand lettering, like you're typing with your hand lettering. It's so cool. It's like one of the best feelings.
Love it. Cool.
Yeah. So let's head back to the deck. So we've done our LSB and our RSB. We didn't talk about kerning yet. Let's talk about kerning. So certain letters, even if you have an LSB and RSB applied, some letter relationships, like notoriously the VA relationship, is always going to look too large as the default, where the LSB and RSB work for mostly all the other letter relationships. But when it comes to a V next to an A, you're always going to have a pretty big gap right here. So if there's 0 kerning here, like if you're in glyphs, I'll just open this up. Your kerning is going to be right here. And you don't want to edit this until you have another letter next to it. So right here, I've got a V and an A. And right here, you can see this massive gap. And it draws your attention to it, but not for the right reasons because it's such a big gap right here because these angles are so similar. So by adding kerning, so I'm just reducing that space by -25. So you can see this is the difference in width that I'm changing just by going -25. And all of a sudden, this feels more similar to some of these other areas of white space that you have throughout your words. So it's just more comfortable for the viewer's eye, and it's not going to be distracting or take away from whatever message the buyer or the user is typing out and communicating. So that's a quick overview of kerning. So it's really easy to add in. It can be very addicting. You can definitely go overboard. You want to always have in the back of your head, use as little amount of kerning as possible, because if you go too far with kerning, it ends up adding so much information to your font file that it could actually not work in certain programs. Like we've had past students have difficulty opening their fonts in Word, and Word is a pretty common program that people use fonts in, and that's a huge problem. And it's because they over-kerned. Like you don't want to start kerning every single letter relationship with every other. That's why we do LSB and RSB, so we can take care of the vast majority of relationships. This is only for those special situations where it's like creating a really large gap that should be fixed. So you want to use caution when you're kerning because it gets addicting. I am guilty of it too. Heads up about that one. Okay, so you want to also program in any alternates or ligatures, which we talked about before. So this is from my font called Skinny Jeans, and this is if I didn't add anything. If I just left the font as it was, and I decided that I didn't want to add anything special to it, but I added lots of special things to it. So this TH ligature, so I said whenever there's a lowercase t and a lowercase h next to each other, don't use this, automatically switch it out with this. So a standard ligature means it will always be switched out. This relationship will never appear unless the user intentionally turns off standard ligatures. So this is what it'll be replaced with, which is far more hand lettered feeling. It's more unique than this is, because this just becomes, kind of boring after a while. So this makes it much more exciting. It makes it look unique. So I also added in an IN ligature, since that's a letter combination that occurs pretty often. And then you can add in alternate characters. So I said, this is the regular G in the font. it's a good G. But if you want a special G, if you're ever like creating a logo maybe, and you want a G that just has a little bit more character than this one, I've also added in this other G that's really special. So this, the user decides when they want to put this in. It's just there for the user if they want it. So all these like little special gifts that you can pack into your font, you want to make sure you're showing this off when you're selling your font, because that is what's going to stay in a buyer's mind and let them know, oh, if I get this font for the same amount as this one, look at everything extra that I'm about to get for it. So once you have all of your programmed extras in, you've done your kerning, you've established your LSB and RSB for all of your letters, your diacritics, which are your accented characters, your symbols, your punctuation. Now you test it out. So you can test out letters in the font program. You can bring it into Illustrator. You can bring it into Word. I take you through all the ways that you can test your font to make sure you have confidence when you export it for the final time, so you can start sending it off to buyers. So you'll export your font files, and your font files are going to be an OTF. That's an open type file. Open type means it's going to include all those special features that you packed in. TTF used to be the only type of font file, and that's a true type file. And that is now kind of just used for really older or outdated software that doesn't support open type. The vast majority of programs that people use now support OpenType. So OpenType is definitely the type of file. If you export no other file, make sure you're exporting an OTF, because that will include all that work that you put in. If you export a TTF, it's not going to be included. But if you want to provide that to buyers in case they are on older software, I offer both. And then you will also export web font files. Web font files you can include. What I do is I include them in an extended license. So if you buy a pricier license, that gives you permission to put the font on anything that you may want to sell someday. And it will also include the web font file, so you can include it on any website too, which can be really appealing to people if they fall in love with the font. So once you have your font exported, now step 4, either you're done and you can keep it for yourself and use it for your personal use, you can share it with family, or if you choose to sell it, you will want to definitely create mockups. Mockups are what allow buyers to imagine using your font for their specific purpose. So when I'm coming up with a font, I always imagine how it's going to be used, and that helps me to create the mockups that will, in turn, persuade them to buy. So I've got a couple examples here. This is the Espresso Roast. We looked at the script font within the Glyphs program, and I created a caps version of it, a symbols version, and a script version. And my idea for this was that it would be used by like your everyday crafter making greeting cards at home, or maybe your Etsy seller that's either screen printing it on goods or whatever, or using their Cricut or Silhouette to create their own artwork that they're then selling. So I wanted to show those kinds of items that they could be using it for. I'm going to take a quick drink of water. So with Espresso Roast, this was more for your everyday crafter, whereas my font Skinny Jeans, I was imagining it more for small businesses. So I added more commercially appealing mock-ups. So you can see I've got a website up here. It's on a magazine. We've got mock-ups that are advertising maybe a clothing collection, maybe a cookbook. So it's a lot of like indie feeling, but it still has that commercial appeal. So I wanted to show that off. And you can see over here, I'm also showing off all those extras that I packed into it that can really sell your font. So they can see if you just want a basic font, this is what it's going to look like. But if you want to really take it to the next level, this is what you can do with it. This is what the font will allow you to do for whatever your specific need is. So these are mock-ups. I use Photoshop for this. You can use, there's some free services online that you can do. I recommend Photoshop. That's just much more powerful. There are plenty of free mockup files online. If you just want to play around with them and get a feel for them, you can make your own, or you could buy paid ones. There's so many to choose from. So whatever your idea of what you want to mock up is, you can find a mock-up for it. So you don't have to feel like you got to do it yourself all the time. If this feels like it's too much, or you feel like you don't have the design chops to do it, please just take a look at all the free and paid mockup files out there. They give you literally everything that you need to make it look super pro. So please don't have anxiety or feel like you can't do it, because really, there's just so much out there now that can make you look however you want to look. All right. So then you post it for sale on either your own website, which is what I do, or other online marketplaces. I personally sell on my own site and Creative Market. Creative Market can be a little difficult to get onto, so you want to have a fairly large font collection before you apply to be a seller there. This is what Creative Market's website looks like. The Hungry JPEG is much easier to get onto, and this is what that looks like. And then probably the easiest marketplace to get onto is Font Bundles, and this is what their website looks like. So those are the top 3 that I would recommend pursuing. Wait on Creative Market until you have probably 10 fonts, 5 to 10 fonts, and a decent portfolio you can show them. But after you've created just a couple of fonts, you could probably make it onto Font Bundles or the Hungry JPEG. And they've got like all of their visitors, those are buyers. So you're getting in front of the people that are looking to buy hand lettered fonts. So that's my recommendations as far as marketplaces go. And that's it. Those are our steps, 4 steps as an overview for creating hand lettered fonts.
Teela, thank you so much. Wow.
You're welcome. I know
that was a lot
right?
of information there. Yeah. But also so cool, so satisfying. Just such a cool process to actually see in action.
Yeah.
For everyone watching, we are going to do a formal Q&A here in just a minute. But I did want to clarify, because we had quite a few people asking questions about your course and what it offers and all of this. I know you said there's like a PC version, there's a Mac version. One of the main questions, and Spencer has also been answering.
Yeah, Spencer's my husband. So
awesome.
Yeah.
He's been doing a really good job. But as far as like where you should expect to be when you're starting this, would it be for beginning graphic designers, people who haven't done anything at all with font making? Sure. Where's a good point for your course?
I would say as long as if you have a passion for hand lettering, you can make any style of font or any style of lettering into a font. Even if you're just starting with hand lettering, I encourage you, look at these different marketplaces, scroll through their fonts. You're going to find fonts where you're like, yeah, my hand letterings can totally jive with these ones. Really, I would not let your lettering make you feel insecure about it. Just please take a look, because different buyers have different reasons for purchasing different styles, and the feeling, like, even if it feels amateur, maybe that's the look they want on their brand or product or packaging. You never know what the style is that someone's looking for. So that could be the perfect fit for somebody. So as long as you have a passion and an interest in hand lettering, any style can be made into a font.
Gotcha. That is so cool. I have a younger sister who's been talking about making my grandpa's handwriting into a font. So we've had start there, right?
Yeah, we've had students do that as gifts to family members, or if they lost a parent and they wanted to do that as like a memory, so they could just type out whatever and feel like they're closer to their family member. I mean, it's so touching. It's incredible what this can do.
That's awesome. And then, so just to tack on to kind of what the course offers as well, this is a relevant question. Do you include information about licensing? And I was also just curious, does the course cover like selling your fonts and all of that as well?
I have awesome. I have a selling module that is, gosh, I just updated it last year, so it's almost 2 hours long, I want to say. And licensing, I give you my licenses, so you can see exactly what I say to buyers in my info file. You can see what the fonts look like. I give you the actual fonts, so you can open them in the font software and take a look at those fonts. And I tell you exactly how I sell mine, how I license it, how I position myself, everything. Like literally everything I do, I share with you.
That's so awesome. Well, and then so I know you gave some alternatives for the font software for people taking your course. If they're not using Illustrator, some people have been asking if they could use Affinity or other things like that. Would that be comparable, still worth taking the course if you're using that other software?
So Affinity lacks some of the major features that we use in the cleanup and formatting process. So I unfortunately have to tell people you can use it if you want, but I don't provide support for it because it's lacking those features that we need. Illustrator, you can choose to pay month to month, and you can just cancel when you're done using it. So in my opinion, it's worth paying for the month that you're using it, because it's just, the features will make everything go so much faster and smoother. And you will know that you don't have anything to worry about. You're not going to have any weird things that show up later because you're using different software.
Gotcha. Well, I do know Adobe also provides you can just pay for one app at a time.
Yes,
A lot
one app,
cheaper if you
month
want.
to month. Exactly. Yeah.
That's
So
nice.
you can totally do that.
Cool. So just to make clear that everyone knows, this course is available. There is a link in the chat and in the description of the video. You also said there, if people want a little more information, there was
Yes.
a link to go to.
Yep. If you want to learn more about the course, read some testimonials, I've got a video too that you can watch. It's all at learnfontmaking.com. You can grab literally, I have an entire FAQ section there too. So any other questions, and obviously, absolutely feel free to email me too if you have any questions beyond that.
Awesome. And what's that course cost at the moment if you're getting into this?
Yes. So I only open this course once a year. That way, because I personally make myself available to help everyone that comes in. That way I can help the most amount of people at once. So I am available once you enroll. It comes with my personal help if you need me for anything. Like, I want you to succeed. I want you to be able to create and sell your own fonts. There are 2 price options. There's a one-time payment of $397 or 6 payments of $75. And it includes the entire course, all the bonuses, access to me if you need me, and membership in our private Facebook groups, which has over 1,000 people. So if you need help and maybe I'm eating dinner and you post in the Facebook group, there's so many people that are so nice and willing to help. And you can search through our past discussions and you can find answers that way too. Then you may not even have to post a question. We have such a history of past questions that have been answered that it's just a wealth of information there.
So there's community access as well, and lifetime access to the course.
Lifetime access to the course. Awesome. And lifetime access to updates. As the software has changed, which it has since I first released the course, every single year I make sure it's fully updated. So you won't have any issues depending on any updates to different softwares.
Cool. Did you have anything else you wanted to say about the course? We've got quite a few questions in, so we can hop into those if you're...
Yeah, please. Let's take care of any questions.
Yeah, we'll start with this is just a fun one I love. From Lauren, how do you get inspiration for your font names?
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I read a lot. So sometimes I'll come across a word in a book and that will inspire me. For espresso roast, my husband and I invested in a coffee maker, like an espresso machine, and we were looking for really good beans to use. So I was looking at the packaging of some different beans that we were trying out, and I was like hyped up on caffeine, and I just started writing, and all my words were like coffee words. So I was like, I'm just going to call this espresso roast. So it's super random. Miss Magnolia was based on a song I was listening to in the car one day. Awesome. So it comes from all different places.
That's so fun. I mean, kind of a follow-up question. This is coming from me though, as far as like copyright and stuff, do you have to, like, where do you source that information to make sure you're not infringing on other people's font names, or is that not really a problem if it's your original font? Right.
So you want to, as best you can, avoid using the same font name as someone else is using, because as far as SEO goes, you will appear much stronger in search results if you're the only one. So what I recommend doing is just doing a quick Google search, look at the different marketplaces, see if you find any that have the same name. If you do, I'd recommend changing it or altering it a little bit. And then you'll have less competition. And then, like for Tuesday Script, I was the only one that had Tuesday as the name of the font. I'm sure there's like ripoffs of that now. Right. But when I came out with it, like, it was instantly, people remembered it and thought about it, and it helped me so much in search results. So when you think of a name, just search for it first, and then you'll have less competition.
So cool. Okay. Another question coming from Nita. How long does it take you to create a full font, like start to finish?
Right. So it all depends on what the font looks like, what it includes, what your plans for it are. If you're just putting together a quick font, like just uppercase, lowercase English, some numbers, a little bit of punctuation, you could have it done in a week. If you plan on doing that and creating mock-ups and selling it, it's going to take you a little bit longer. If you're going to add multilingual characters in it, that could add a little extra time as well. But the more you do it, you can get really fast. Like we've got, I was just talking to one of our past students, and she said she outputs a new one every single week that she is selling that's multilingual. So once you get in the rhythm of doing it, as long as you're keeping up with it, you can output them really quickly. But the first few are going to take longer, obviously, because there's just so much information and so much to learn. But once you get comfortable and you get in that rhythm, I mean, it's up to you how many you want to do, and what your schedule looks like.
So cool. I got kind of two that I think are somewhat paired here.
Sure.
Could we use what you teach to create a font in another language?
Yes.
And that also kind of pairs with I am in India. Will the font license process be the same everywhere? So basically, internationally, is this information relevant? Does it all work?
Sure. So the question about a font in different languages, I'd recommend going through the course with an English font. That way you can follow along with me and see where everything is located. And then you can do whatever language you would like to do afterwards, but it will be the exact same process. It'll just be for different types of characters. And then as far as font licenses, it's worldwide because it's online. So location makes no difference.
Awesome. This is a good process. Would you recommend starting with the dream font in your head or starting with something more simple?
Definitely something simple. And this is a trap that a lot of new students fall into because they have this lettering in their mind and they can't wait to make it into a font. And I can totally empathize with that because that was me too.
Right.
But as far as getting the process down, I always say get out the bugs and whatever, you need to learn through the process, get it out with a font that you don't really care about. I always say use your first font as a practice font, just to go through the motions, find where things are, get used to the process, and then bring in that really beautiful font. And then you're already prepared and you're already thinking okay, this is what's coming up. This is what I need to add to it. Or you'll learn something in the course and be like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. I'm going to add that into my really cool font. So you don't want to miss out on things for the font that your dream font. So I would say save it for the second or the third one that you make.
Right. Here's what is Astropad? Is this software for Mac and iPad?
Yes. So Astropad is an app and you install it on both your desktop or laptop and on your iPad. And when you open it up, it's going to pair the two together so it can mirror your desktop screen onto your iPad, and then you can use your stylus. So it's like putting Illustrator directly on your iPad, so then you can clean up your letters like crazy fast. But if you're on a Mac, you can use the sidecar feature, which is really easy to use. It works the same way.
I've followed Astropad for a while, actually, and I feel bad because I'm pretty sure Apple Sherlocked
they totally did
software. So I will say, if you go and look at Astropad, it costs more, of course, because Sidecar comes with it. But I also know they're consistently trying to develop new things for creators.
So I've had some, with Sidecar, I've had a few bugs here and there, whereas Astropad has already had time to work out their bugs.
Right.
So sometimes I kind of switch back and forth between them, but I would just encourage you to try out Sidecar first. And if it's doing what you need it to do, then there's no need to look for Astropad. But if you're I want to see if something else will work smoother, then check out Astropad.
Totally. I've had the experience too of asking them hey, will this feature be available? And 2 weeks later they email yep, it is. So they're very responsive as well.
Yeah. They are. They're great.
Yeah. Cool. Got time, I think, for a couple more here, but is there any free font creator available which works the same way as the font creator? I assume they're asking glyphs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so there are free font creation. There's apps available. I'm sure some people have heard of FontSelf. There are other software available for creating fonts for free. The problem is because they're free, they're not incentivized to either update it, to fix bugs, which there are so many bugs in free software. And when you create a font and you try and sell it, and a buyer runs into an issue that you didn't know about and you cannot fix it because you're using free software that the bugs are already baked into, it's going to ruin your reputation and you're not going to be able to fix it for the buyer. So both of those two things are like disqualifying as far as selling. You can use free software if you want to just make it for yourself, but do not sell stuff that you're making with free software because like your reputation is everything when you start selling online. You don't want to, be behind the 8 ball before you even get started. So it is an investment, but if it's something you're serious about, then you're going to make it back if you put in the effort. So that's my 2 cents with free software.
Gotcha. Well, and I imagine that I'd like to tack on the other question there, which was, could you do Illustrator on the iPad instead of on the laptop? I imagine it's somewhat similar. You could do this, but you're just not going to end up with a high quality product.
So Illustrator has an iPad app, but it's still very new and it's really buggy and it doesn't have the features that we take advantage of when we're working in Illustrator. Plus, you need to copy from Illustrator and paste into the font software. And the font software is only available on a desktop or laptop. So you can't copy from your iPad and paste on your desktop.
Right.
So you have to keep them in the same environment. So because of that, Illustrator desktop, laptop, that's the only way you want to go.
Gotcha. I think we got most people's questions, and we're also coming up a little bit on time.
Yep.
So just wanted to thank you once more again so much. You gave a lot of information, even just in this course. I'm already eager to go try some of this stuff.
Oh, my pleasure.
For everyone watching, please hop in the comments. Thank Teela. Don't forget, there's the course available here. One more time, would you also say the link that you have your course and more info at?
LearnFontMaking.com. It closes this Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. So once it closes, it's not going to open again until next summer. I only open it once a year so I can help everybody because I want to make sure that you create and sell the fonts that you want to create. So just FYI, if you're interested, LearnFontMaking.com. Just make sure you check out those details before this Friday.
Awesome. And that's true for the Discover link as well.
Yep.
All of those are cool. So hop on that if you're interested. For everyone that was watching as well, I know it came up a few times. If you didn't hear before, there will be a replay available of this in the YouTube and emailed to you. If you like videos like this, please like and subscribe to the Discover channel. We're trying to bring more and more creators like Teela out to help us learn new things and grow our knowledge base. Teela, before we totally wrap up, I'd like to ask do you have any last little parting advice for people starting on their font making journey before we call it quits today?
Sure. So I would say consistency is key. The more you practice, that's my whole MO. Every Tuesday, I'm encouraging people to create new work every single week. Even if it's 1 day, 1 hour a week, do it every week. And it's incredible how much you'll improve. If you love hand lettering and you're just starting out, don't fall into the comparison trap. It's so easy to compare your beginning to someone else's middle or way past middle. I don't know if anyone really gets to the end. It's really easy to do. So just focus on yourself, get inspired, use that as fuel instead of fear, and practice. I would hand letter every single day for over a year. And now I just do it because I love it every day. But I wanted to get better and I would look at inspiration. I would find things that appeal to me aesthetically. And I would say, okay, this is kind of the style that I want to do. So I would look at it, put it away. I would draw my version of it, and then I would look at it again and compare and see where I needed to improve. So that's a really good exercise for improving your lettering. So if you're serious about it, don't expect your first font to make $1 million. It's a process. It's not like a get rich quick kind of thing, but consistency is key, and it can be life-changing if you stick with it and are committed to it and are consistent with it. If you're serious about it, there's so much potential here. It's really exciting for someone who loves lettering.
That's so cool. Thank you so much, Teela. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and you as well, Teela.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah.